Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Alfred Huang at the Reister International Martial Arts School. I'm one of the senior instructors, and we just had a recent instructor camp this past week, and I felt it would be good to showcase a few examples of what we refer to as fight training. I chose 5 different clips to show some common tendencies and mistakes that many people do. And these aren't the only ones. These are just a few things that some people do. But I thought it was a great illustration of why we train the way we do. The guys that were depicted in these clips, they're all advanced students at the school. They're all really good sports and letting me utilize their clips to show some of the common errors and problems. Then later on, I will show 3 different clips of how to execute them properly. So let me just also preface this by saying that what we're talking about and what we're doing here is not situational or scenario-based martial arts, but instead what we're trying to do is cultivate a set of skills. And you need to have a certain environment to be able to learn how to do certain things. Sometimes you have to simplify the parameters until the student is confident that the tactics work, and then you can start to add more to it and make it a little more difficult. That's kind of how the training works. I always tell the students, related to the tactics, it's easy to understand it, it's easy to appreciate it, but to actually execute it, especially under duress, is another thing altogether, and it takes quite some time to learn. What you're going to see are 5 clips. I'm going to show them first in normal speed, and then I will show them in slower motion in order to explain what is it you're seeing. In order to appreciate some of the tactics requires some prerequisite knowledge that I'm not going to be able to cover in this video. Things like what is a fighting measure, knowing what it is to distance pace, to put yourself in a position where you do not have to address the weapon. These are some things that you need to have a part of you in order to appreciate the tactics. Part of the seminar also included some advanced fighting concepts. And again, the purpose of this video isn't to go over all those points. The condition or the environment that we're training here is you're having 2 attackers. They're both in the facing position, pretty much in middle range, imminent type of confrontation. The opponent on the student's left side will attack first with a single direct attack. The student's right side will attack immediately afterwards. So it'll be like a 1-2 attack. The feeders are asked to commit to the attack, not to do any trickery yet or fakes. Now we're going to go back and review these clips in slow motion. In this first motion, he does something that's very common to newer students, is that you see this preparatory motion before his swing. We call this a negative motion. He wants to land a heavy blow, so usually you'll see people pull their weapon back before they strike. In a one-on-one scenario, you might be able to get away with it, but with multiple attacker scenarios, this is valuable time. I mean, it's fractions of a second, but it's time that you can't afford to lose, because you will end up getting hit by the secondary attacker, and you don't have time to recover from a inefficient swing. Okay, so he hits him, and he gets clipped in the second one, and he does something here which we call imprecise striking, where he may hit the abdomen, he may try to hit the closest target he could see. Like I said, with one-on-one type scenarios, that's not always a bad thing, but in multiple attacker situations, if you're doing imprecise hitting, the opponent may come back and try to hit you again, so you're not taking them out efficiently. Okay, this next clip, and the first thing you'll notice is what we call reaching. And reaching is your preparatory motion in trying to address the person's attack. So the problem with reaching is it usually is a sign of bad position. Usually you're under a little bit more stress. Another thing is the feet tend not to move as well when you're reaching. So he is able to pass there. He has a good hit. And again, as the secondary attacker is starting, you can see he's reaching again, addressing that movement, and he gets clipped there. So he was in a kind of a bad position. Also, people tend to reach when they're not adequately prepared. Okay, on the third clip, he does something a little different in this one. He kind of moves to his right. So he's going on the inside of the first attacker, wanting to try to hit the second attacker first, and they both get clipped. So it was kind of a tie. In this kind of scenario, it's not the best thing to do in trying to go to the inside and try to hit the secondary attacker in this particular scenario. You're closing the distance to the second attacker, and more often than not, you're going to get into a tie. And actually, I tried that myself, and I couldn't get it to work. So here he is again. And what we have here again is reaching. And of course, look at it. He's probably not quite offline yet. He's already addressing the weapon as it's in its preparatory motion. So he's reaching out too soon. He's able to pass it. And then he does this, what we call a windmill type of a swing. So he's able to land a hard blow, but the secondary guy is already coming, and he clips him there as he's receiving that blow. So he ends up having a tie. Now, if you imagine, instead of being soft sticks, if these were machetes or swords or blades, that doesn't really bode too well for you. So as he's coming in, I want you to pay attention to a couple of things. Number one, he does the reaching again. He cocks his weapon back, but pay attention to this right foot. And he likes to step back to avoid. He successfully get the second hit, and his right foot still stays forward, and he gets clipped. And we don't like to get into this area because you end up being square to the secondary attacker. Okay, and this last clip does this, and what you see here is kind of he's caught off guard a little bit, and so he does what we call leaning. And so this, you just trying to avoid getting hit, right? And so the head is usually leaning back, and you're imbalanced, you're a little late to the response. This is where the error in addressing the opponent's weapon, this is kind of what we're talking about. You're in a position where you have to address the opponent's weapon, and you're always going to be a tick behind. He successfully avoids that, able to hit Sifu, and then straight back in that straight line, and he gets clipped by the secondary attacker. Big part of that is he's creating too much space. He's still relatively squared up with the secondary attacker. Okay, so I'm going to now show you 3 clips. I'll do it again in real time. Okay, so in this first clip, one thing I was pointing out is that sometimes Sifu will kind of give you a little bit of movement and a little bit of gestures. We call these tails, like in a card game, someone giving away their hand. So if you can learn to pick up little cues, visual cues before the attack, then it kind of helps you to prepare so that when the attack comes, you're not caught off guard and you're not addressing the weapon. So as he's coming, notice that I do pass. Now, in terms of my pass, it's timing wise, it's at the full extension of the first attacker's swing. He's already committed to that swing, so it becomes easier to address the secondary attacker. Watch my weapon hand. It's still pretty much at my center line. I'm not cocking it back. You're able to get a hit straight to the target. You want to get to the face, to the nose, to the eyes. For safety, I just tap his head. Here comes a secondary attacker. I do a pendulum swing and I move my body to the opponent's outside, creating angle. I'm not square, and I'm able to land another blow to a precise target to the face. And I'm avoiding this area, kind of like no man's land. Okay, now in the second clip, if you watch again my right foot, we call this a pendulum motion, a pendulum swing. So I bring that right foot back. Again, I hit Sifu again with a precise strike. And the precise strikes don't have to be hard when you're training. I mean, speed and power can be added later, but if you can't do it when you're calm, then you definitely won't do it when you're stressed and under attack. So here, another thing is that you do not always have to answer everything that comes at you. And a lot of the tendencies of a lot of students is they feel like anytime someone swings, they have to do something, whether it's blocking or trying to hit the hand or trying to deflect it or reach for it, So in this case, I didn't feel like I had a good advantage to it. So sometimes it's just better just to let it go and not come back towards the opponent to close the distance again. That would be another tactical error. So I will actually disengage. And if the opponent decides to turn around and come back after me, then I would allow the opponent to close the gap and create another point of advantage for myself. Okay, in the third clip. Okay, so in this scenario, Sifu decides to change his tactics on me without letting me know. So he does not lunge at me fully, and he kind of swings at me and kind of stops. So I have to go use him as a shield. Of course, a secondary attacker has to go around him. I do something where I call a hand-only technique, where I impede the attacker's swing early, and I'm able to funnel him in and strike him in the face. And so that's a condition called funneling. And this is kind of an example of changing the feed to see if your innate response can pick up on those things. You don't have time to constantly analyze it, which is why we like to train these things until it's second nature. That's why it takes some time to do this kind of training. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to play the rest of this clip, allowing you to listen to what Sifu John Reister is saying.
You see what happened? So that's my advantage. He did, but he didn't know I was going to do it. And as the feeder, I have the ability to control certain things to help him learn, right? So I gave him a completely different kind of energy, and he was forced to respond to that on the fly. So he had no knowledge that it was going to happen. All he knows, I'm going to attack first. Doesn't know how. Okay? You see what I'm talking about?
So what did you do different, Sifu?
So you notice the first few times when I came at him, I really what?
Lunged in?
Now, if you notice the last time, when I came at him, I stepped and I swung and I held my ground. Okay? So to create a different environment for him to have to deal with second opponent, which you guys kind of start to what? feed a little bit differently, give a little bit different energy. Don't sneak it yet, as far as how, right? But still, be a different person.
Okay, well, I hope that was insightful. Of course, if you have any questions, you can always address it to Sifu, John Reister, or myself. And I hope you appreciate the kind of tactical training we're endeavoring to teach. Of course, this requires a lot of prerequisite skill. You need to know how to use the tools in the toolbox. But once you've acquired those prerequisite set of skills, and this is the kind of training that we would like to develop more. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.